Welcome to SwitchCorner, my name is Alex, and today we're going to be taking a look at Far Changing Tides on the Nintendo Switch, the highly anticipated follow-up to Lone Sails. Can it deliver for the second time a puzzle adventure with an air of mystery, or is this second time just one step too many? Well, hit subscribe, join us here on SwitchCorner for reviews and deals weekly, and let's get started. Story then, and honestly there's not a whole lot to it, but we'll also be brief to avoid any sort of spoilers. All you really know going in is what the eShop gives you, that is, it's the journey of a boy and his ship embarking on this adventure to find a new home while travelling both serene and treacherous landscapes. Think calm water, storms, underwater worlds, and the ability to swim and dive. More naturally occurs within this journey, but there's no words at all in this one, and that is often left up to your own interpretation. For the most part though, I enjoyed it. It's definitely a longer experience than the original, clocking in around 5.5 hours for me. The only thing I will say, the ending, you keep thinking this game's going to end, and then it continues, and I did find myself getting a tiny bit kind of impatient with it. For story though, it was absolutely worth it. I was a big fan of the original game, and I think they deliver here something similar enough to be a companion title, but different enough to not simply feel like the same story retold. Gameplay then, it really comes down to 3 elements. Pilot your ship, this time on water, unlike the original, explore on ground locations, and then also dive into the depths of the ocean. The gameplay and the controls involved, they are simple. In fact, it's 2 mechanics at its core. The ability to jump and then the option to grab onto something and push and pull. This then of course is accompanied by movement, which is on a 2D plane left to right, and you'll also be able to climb by simply pushing up and down. Starting with the on-land sequences then, these make up the majority of the game's packed-in puzzles, and it's really with one simple objective. You need to move some sort of obstacle out of the way of your ship. While they definitely start simple enough, they do of course escalate, though never to anything that should have you stuck here for too long. What I enjoyed in these moments, with such basic controls, they managed to keep them unique and never too repetitive. This can also be attributed to the landscape as well. It's constantly shifting in design. It allows for locations that just feel a little bit different to navigate. The ship then is of course kind of the core of the experience. Pushing forward can only be achieved on board. Swim too far away, the screen fades to black until you return. The idea here though being 2D, you naturally don't really steer as such, but you will be operating mechanics on board. The mast, for example, it will require you to raise and lower it as needed before catching the wind with your sails at the optimal angle. That is identified by the flag on screen. There's like a turquoise element to that top of that bar. You need to hit this area. Turquoise in this game is pretty much the sign of you can interact with me. Hit this bar though and a second sail appears to propel you faster. Inside then, things get more complicated, and while I will be revealing some of the early game upgrades you do receive, I'm also purposely leaving out the last half of the game so you can go in with as little knowledge as possible. Here though, we have access to a hose or suction system. Use this to, let's say, cool down overeating mechanics. We have hooks for loot, which we will get to here shortly. We have an engine which appears in the first 30 or so minutes of gameplay. Now to operate this, you need to burn items you find around this world. That's the loot for the most part, outside of a repair tool that you can use as well. With items burnt though, you'll be jumping on the device next to it to fan that fire and get optimal speed. Combining this then with the mast and the sail, it can really help you pick up some serious speed across this landscape. It sounds simple, but then you throw in your acceleration choice as well, and the fact systems can get damaged, and it keeps you generally quite busy as you journey through this self-described and meditative experience. Don't take that for boring either. There's absolutely some intensity in here as well, like when storms appear and this calm water turns into a bit of a roller coaster ready to harm your vessel. On that note, actually, it's worth knowing as well, no death in this game. That includes fall damage as well, and you can even dive underwater for as long as you please. I really enjoyed the element though of verticality and that diving. It also means now puzzles are not always simply in front of you as you may have found with the original release. They will often be below, requiring, some underwater antics. Apart from on land as well, then you can also expect to find that loot to burn or repair on the seabed. The game does a good job of always having something almost close to hand should you run out of fuel. The game though, just like the original, there's no tutorial, no text, but it makes everything easy to figure out for yourself. You'll also quickly pick up on things like a system that rotates items into the fire quickly, that kind of comes with a little bit of pride as you kind of experiment in this world. Problems then, and while I have very few honestly, the big frustration for me was actually damage to the mast and the sail system. Now look, the majority of damage that happens on board the ship, absolutely my fault. I could have avoided it, I made the mistake. In this instance though, the camera automatically pulls in and out, and often, unless you're controlling the steering, the engine or the sail, it's actually very difficult to spot anything coming up, and often that notice is just way too short. Either the ship won't stop in time if you pull back on the engine, or you can't unhook the mast and lower it in time. The camera, it could have done with being pulled back just very slightly to give you just that kind of extra split second of notice. It can also then hit objects on the side of you, and it's a case of initially it's a little difficult to judge that depth, but you will get used to it. My only other complaint is the climbing up and down. It works, but it can kind of be a little bit awkward at times to get our lead to latch on. Otherwise though, look, I enjoyed it. Managing all these systems surprisingly satisfying, and that exploration also equally rewarding. It's constantly mixing up the location, whether you're on land, on board or under the water. It feels like a natural and worthy continuation of the original game. Graphically then, like the original, it's got a unique style that is stunning. It's often minimalistic but doesn't forget the detail when it is necessary, like on your ship itself. For me personally though, it hits a number of different notes, sometimes surreal, others over the top, sometimes almost cartoonish, but it really makes each location stand out, and you'll see everything from the open ocean to mountains to simple almost forests to sunken and abandoned cities. These, they hide almost an air of sinister as well, so it almost changes, I guess, the emotion of the scene as well, and that's really, really impressive. The water effects then stunning. Visually, it's some of the best water work I've seen on the system, and it has a nice differentiation when it comes to seeing it from above, but also when you are below. The only issue I really noted, this is a much bigger world than that original game, so this leads to some clipping occasionally between our character and the surroundings, though I will say extremely minor. And then also when you're on the lower deck of the ship, it displays the inside as well as the water, and it can make things just a little bit confusing as the water effects play over the top, while you're trying to do something. Audio then, like the original, it is absolutely a highlight, and that standout area is the soundtrack that reacts to the actions on screen. It is for the most part kind of simplistic, classical instrumentation, but it knows when to dial up the intensity, and this, like the original, it's a soundtrack I'll absolutely be listening to outside of the game worlds. This is then reinforced with sound effects, and it feels a little more alive than the first game, from the wind to the creaks of the ship to effects underwater that add almost a little bit of mystery to your surroundings. Look, on an audio front, no complaints from me, it is exceptional work. So the final verdict, and if you enjoyed the original game, absolutely play this. It's that simple. It packs that same relaxing experience with vehicle control and exploration, but now with that extra layer of an ocean to explore, that extra verticality. For some, I absolutely will say the vague story that won't be for them with no real guidance or reason. Some won't be able to find the motivation or the why behind, well, basically, why should you keep this character moving forward? Why basically should you care? For me though, that mystery and that trust from the creators to let me go into this one and take away my own meaning, that, I think personally, that is a powerful thing. It has some issues though still that I cannot ignore. The controls with climbing, they can feel a little bit awkward, and then the story, it feels like the ending is extended just a bit too much, or even, I'll reword that. The camera gets a little bit more cinematic. It makes you feel like, oh, here is the ending, and really that is not the case. Kind of started to burn me out towards the end, I'd say for the last maybe 30 to 45 minutes. Still a great 8 out of 10 from me today. I cannot wait now to see where they take the series next. There's very few games out there like it, and I hope this one finds a huge amount of success. Will you be adding this one to the library then, or are you holding onto that cash? A shout out then to the patrons of the channel who are going above and beyond to support SwitchCorner. It helps more than you know, so thank you all so much. Then hit subscribe if you love the Switch, as much as we all do here. Join our growing family, and I'll see you all on the next video. Thanks everyone.